So there's a massive problem out there with all content that's focused on fixing posture, mobility, and more. And that's, where do you start? Do I fix this problem first? Do I go after this one instead? Do I do what this guy says or what that girl says? Whoa! You see, the dirty little secret when it comes to fixing posture and mobility problems is there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. You have to do things to address your individual needs. I'm going to solve that problem today with this video. You're going to learn a self-testing framework where you can pinpoint your specific mobility restrictions. This is a framework that I use with hundreds of patients and clients every year to improve their mobility. And then I'll show you a sequence of exercises that you can do to address your specific mobility problems so you finally get results. When it comes to fixing posture, a wise man by the name of Obi-Wan Kenobi said it best: your eyes can deceive you, don't trust them. Most postural problems should be approached the same way. Take anterior pelvic tilt, for example. Did you know there's at least 2 different strategies you could use to improve this issue? Well, how are you gonna know which one's gonna be best for you? Well, what I do with my patients and clients is I actually test where their movement is restricted, and then I design exercises to address those specific problems. And if you want to efficiently improve your mobility, posture, pain, and more, you have to go through the same process. It's no different than measuring your weight on a scale. How are you going to know if your diet's working if your weight's not going in the direction you want? We're going to apply the same thing when it comes to improving posture. We're going to go through 5 different tests. Start with this one. This is seated trunk rotation. This gives you a good appreciation for your overall rotational mobility. Your goal is to get about a 45-degree angle and have it be as symmetrical as possible. The way you'll do this is you'll put the back of your hands on your face, arms down on the chest, and you want to rotate your trunk and head as one unit. Don't make the mistake of whipping your head to try to make up for the rotational limitations. If you can't hit that 45 degrees, muscles on the front and back side of your body, not just in the trunk, but also in the pelvis, are likely tight, and you'll want to address that first. The next test is a toe touch. If you can't touch your toes, this will be the next thing you'll want to address after rotation. Next, we're going to check your squat. The squat checks the upper part of the pelvis and lower back. If this area is tight, it's going to limit your external rotation. Keep the same stance that you had for the toe touch with your feet pointing forward. Keeping the feet flat, you want to squat down as low as you can without forcing. If you notice that your feet spin out or your heels come up or you can't hit depth, you need to improve your external rotation, which again is related to the upper part of the pelvis. The next 2 tests look at mobility in the upper part of the body, specifically the rib cage, as this affects your neck, your trunk, and your shoulder mobility. We'll first look at shoulder external rotation. This test is related to mobility in the upper back and in the lower ribs. Lie on your back with your knees bent. Your arm is at a 90-degree angle, both at the elbow and the shoulder. You want your arm to flop back into position. Ideally, the knuckles should rest on the ground with about a 30-degree bend in the wrist. If they can't, these areas on the rib cage are restricted. And the final test is the Apley's behind the back scratch test. This tells you about your internal rotation capabilities in the body, which is related to your mobility on the front side of the body, as well as the bottommost part of the rib cage, which includes some of the lower back. For this, you want to look straight ahead and have one arm touch the opposite top part of the shoulder blade and the opposite arm trying to go after the bottom part of the opposite shoulder blade. Ideally, your middle finger should touch both of these points. If they can't, then you are restricted in those areas of the rib cage and are limited in internal rotation. Phew, that's a lot. Where in the heck do we even start? Well, you can break most of these tests up into 3 distinct categories. You either need to improve your overall rotation, your external rotation, or your internal rotation. If your trunk rotation test was restricted, then you need to improve your body's overall ability to rotate. And that's relaxing pretty much everything. If that was good, then you want to check the external rotation-based tests first, which would be shoulder external rotation and the squat. If those were limited, that would be the next thing to tackle. And then you want to go after your internal rotation-based tests, which would be getting that full toe touch and improving your aptly. Now that you know what bucket you're in, you can do a specific exercise sequence to address that restriction. What I would recommend is go through the sequence I'm going to show you for 2 weeks. Recheck your tests. That'll let you know whether you need to progress and work on the same thing, or if you have a different mobility restriction that you now need to shift towards. Give each one 2 weeks before you move on to the next one. That way you can milk all the benefits. Let's start with improving overall rotation. The goal at this phase of the sequence is to reduce overall muscle activity, because if you can't move in all directions, you're just tight as hell. Let's get that tightness to chill. Start by lying on your side, ideally with a yoga block or even books underneath your lower rib cage long ways and the top part of your pelvis. The added pressure on the side of the body helps open up the front and back dimensions. When the front and back of the body is tight, the muscles create this action through your torso, and it limits your ability to rotate. When we place blocks on the sides, it makes the rib cage move more cylindrically, and that can improve your rotational capabilities. Relax comfortably as you can on these blocks or books, and think about melting down into position. Take slow 4 to 6 count quiet inhales through the nose and soft 4 to 6 count exhales through the mouth. Hold this position for 3 sets of 60 seconds per side. Once you've done that, then you want to go to an active version that improves your rotational capabilities. Lie on your side with a foam roller on the leg or on the arm. You can bias this depending on which measures were more restricted. Relax your limb comfortably in position, and all you're going to do is you're going to slowly, effortlessly move forward and backward along the roller, producing as little tension as humanly possible. With this, you want to quietly nasal breathe throughout. Think the same 4 to 6 count. This I would do a bit longer. I would spend at least 2 to 3 minutes per side and per limb, depending on the position, to get the best results. But if you only got a little bit of time, doing the 3 sets of 60 seconds works pretty well. The last move in sequence is this side lying armbar. This one you can do with a lighter weight. I like a kettlebell best, but a dumbbell works pretty well. Lie on your side with your bottom arm out in front of you, gently pressing into the ground. Your chest should be parallel to the wall. Your top arm should be just a little bit in front of your body. Looking up at the kettlebell with your eyes, you can just hold this position and breathe for the 60 seconds like we did with the other moves. But if you want to kick it up a notch, as you're inhaling, roll to your back. As you're exhaling, roll forward back to the start position. If you do the active rolls, I would do 2 to 3 sets of 10 rolls per side. And if that's too easy, then you can try this side hang exercise, which generates a ton of side ab tension to help open up the front and back of the body. For this, you're going to straddle a bench or get in a glute ham raise. Get your torso and your head parallel to the ground. Hands will be resting on your forehead like you just saw someone famous. Ha! Same slow 4 to 6 count breaths and work up to 3 sets of 60-second holds. Good luck with that one, because it is brutal. If you can nail those moves, you've fixed about 1/3 of your stuff. But I bet any money that your squat, your shoulder mobility is still terrible. For that, you want to go after these external rotation-based moves next. Start with a wall squat. Start by being about 1.5 to 2 foot lengths away from a wall with your feet completely flat and pointing forward. You can put a band around your knees for extra credit. Ideally, your waistband area should be on the wall. If it's not, squat down slightly so it is. Do not force and tuck to get it there, otherwise it's going to limit the mobility gains. Look straight ahead and put your arms up like you're about to get in a fight with someone. Squat down even lower, but keep it well above parallel. If you stay heavy on your heels, you should start to feel your quads work. Take a slow breath in through the nose for a 4 to 6 count. Take a soft exhale through the mouth for a 4 to 6 count. Hold this for 3 sets of 45 to 60 seconds. To help encourage the lower back to flatten, use your heels and your feet to push your back into the wall, but don't force it. It should be like you're walking backwards if you weren't on the wall. To maximize the benefits, you ideally want to work up to a 5-minute hold straight. I know, it sucks, but it's what's gonna help the mobility changes from that move stick. Next, you're gonna do an external rotation biased side plank. Line your side resting on your forearm with your bottom hip at about 60 degrees of flexion. The knee should be bent. The top foot is going to be in front of the bottom ankle. Make a letter C with your hand and rotate your palm down. Roll forward as a unit. Don't make the mistake of over-rotating your trunk. If you roll as a unit slowly, you should feel weight on the bottom outside knee and the wiggle bone right here on the pinky side of your wrist. If you can't feel those points, try placing wedges or even books underneath your leg and your elbow, so that way it tips your weight onto those points. You're then going to use the outside knee and the wiggle bone to press your body upwards. As you do this, the bottom leg produces external rotation, and you can see that the top leg is also in external rotation. To improve ER on the top arm, hold your arm in a bent elbow position like you're carrying a jacket over your shoulder. Keep looking straight ahead and do the same breathing that we did for the wall squat. Hold position for 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds per side. For this last move, lie on your back with your hips at about a 90-degree angle. Your feet will be together and you're going to push your knees apart. Ideally, when you do this, your waistband area should stay flat on the ground. If it isn't, straighten the knees. You have one of two options with this move. If your shoulder external rotation is limited, rest your hands across your forehead and bring the elbows slightly forward. That way you don't feel a massive pec stretch. If you had external rotation but you're limited in shoulder internal rotation, place the arms at about 100 degrees of shoulder flexion with the palms facing upward. Same breaths as all the other moves. Hold this position for 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds. Now, if all of those by chance are, too easy, then you can try this split squat move where you're pressing your knee against a foam roller. You just have to make sure that you keep the foot flat, you're keeping pressure into the foam roller, and you're not leaning through the trunk. If you drop down into a split squat and you get it right, you'll feel the front quad and glute work. I have people hold this one for 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds per leg, doing the same slow breaths throughout. External rotation is critical for improving your overall mobility, and it's something that most flexibility-based sports require. But if you want to get freaky strong, or you want to produce high amounts of force, you also have to have internal rotation mobility. And that's what we're going to work on next. Key if your toe touch or your applies was restricted. We'll first start with a box squat. That's around 10 pounds, 5 kilograms, and stand on the edge of a box or a chair with your feet pointing out. Soften the knees. Take a slow breath in through the nose, and during the exhale, reach the weight forward. This will get weight heavier on your heels. From here, inhale, sit down to the box, keeping the torso pitched forward. Exhale, come back up without locking the knees. Don't make the mistake of leaning back and completely resting when you get on the box, or locking the knees out at the top, as that will limit the mobility gains. Your pacing should be about a 4 count on the way down and a 4 count on the way up. Inhale for that same period on the down, exhale on the way up. Do 2 to 3 sets of 10 reps. This next move is an ab burner, but it's also great for improving internal rotation. For this, you want your feet together with your knees apart, and the same with your hands. Hands together, elbows apart. Have the shoulders at a 90-degree angle and the hips about a 70-degree angle of flexion. Start completely sagged. Take a slow 4 to 6 count inhale through the nose. During the 4 to 6 count exhale, use the wiggle bone, elbow, and your knees to press your trunk upward, about halfway. Don't overpress, because that will limit the mobility gains. If you look really crunchy or hunchback during this movement, you're going too far, kid. Maintain this pressure for 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds, keeping the same breathing pace throughout. Then try this elevated split squat. Place your front leg on a box that's anywhere from 4 inches all the way up to 8. Keep the knees soft and be heavy on the front leg, especially the heel. Looking straight ahead, drop down about 1/4 to halfway. You should feel the front quad cooking. If it's mostly the back leg, shift your weight forward by pressing through the back big toe. Hold this position, slowly breathing like we did with the other moves, for 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds. Now, if by some chance that brutal move is too easy, you can start from the bottom like your Drake, ideally before the Kendrick disses. Get in the bottom position and use your front foot to press yourself barely up off the ground. You ideally want to be holding onto something supported just so you can maximize the mobility gains. Hold this position, again, for 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds per leg. Now, to make sure you're getting the most out of these moves and you're not producing an excessive amount of tension, you need to make sure that your breathing is super duper chill. If you want to practice more of that and do even better with these exercises, check out this video right here because it goes over the best strategies to use when breathing during exercises like these.